everyone, welcome back. My name's Diana, aka Bookish Di, and I'm here for my January TBR because it's now new month, new year, new decade, although I think there's like room for debate on that. I don't know. People are like being really pedantic, I think that's the right word for it, about whether or not like the 0 is the first year of the decade or the 1. Anyway, happy 2020. Fingers crossed that this year doesn't turn out to be a trash fire, although we're not off to a great start. Anyway, sorry about that. So yeah, I just want to talk a little bit today about my January TBR as well as some, in general, reading goals. I'm not trying to have too many specific goals this year just because I find if I have specific goals, it does make it a little bit harder for me in case I fall behind. It feels not great when I don't meet those goals. So just in general, I would say 3 major goals at this point. So the first goal I have in general is to read 100 books. You can see my cat in the background. I'm sorry about that. Anyway, is to read 100 books. That's kind of in general my goal when I don't have grad school to kind of screw with my life. I did read over 100 last year, which was great. So trying to keep up that momentum. The second goal that I have, which does tie in with my TBR for this month, is to be better about reading books that I own. I updated my list of to read own books on Goodreads, and I'm not going to say how many it is because it's a lot, and I really need to do my best to limit that and then maybe do an unhaul of books that I read that I don't feel the need to keep around, at least for the physical books. I do also have a number of ebooks. Anyway, sorry for the rambling. But yeah, so that's my second major goal. And then the third major goal that I have is just kind of generally don't be afraid of rereads. Just because there are several series where I read the first book a while ago and then never got around to finishing the series. And then I'm like, well, it's been a couple of years and I don't know if I necessarily remember the book. So trying to do more rereads to make sure that I can catch up on some series. I will be doing a book blanket again, or a book knitting project again this year. I learned my lesson about the book scarf. I will be demonstrating that on my 2019 wrap up. It's really long. I'm not done knitting it. It's really long. But so I'm going to do instead a book blanket. I found kind of a general pattern that involves double moss stitch blocks that are knit together in like a scarf form. So I'm going to be modifying that because the original pattern has, I think, 190 squares, and I read, but I don't read that much. So yeah, that's going to be my long-term project for 2020. I'm hoping to get a really nice blanket out of it, and maybe it'll be easier to keep up with than the scarf because I won't be using tiny needles. So those are my 2020 reading goals. And so now for the first TBR of 2020, I am solely focusing on books that I own. So while I didn't completely clear out my library books, I got rid of most of them. Either I read them or turned them in. And so January is just going to be dedicated to reading books that I own. You can see Leia in the background. Anyway, so first up, I'm currently reading book 3 in the Mage World series. It is by Deborah Doyle and James MacDonald. It is called By Honor Betrayed. And I might do kind of a trilogy roundup once I'm done. But I read the first 2 books this year, and I really enjoyed them. They're a lot of fun. They remind me a lot of Star Wars Legends, but in a good way, and you know, without Waru or Abeloth or weird force shit that makes no sense outside of like 2 books. Anyway, Star Wars Legends, fun times. So By Honor Betrayed by Deborah Doyle and James McDonald. And I'm very sorry that the camera is shaking right now. My cat is playing by the tripod and screwing things over. So next up on my TBR, I have the first volume of Pretty Deadly by Kelly Sue DeConnick and Emma Rios. I've had this book for a while, I think since the first trade came out. And I keep meaning to read it. I keep not reading it, so I'm hoping to finally get around to it this month. Next up, and this is going to be part of a larger project that I'm going to be doing another video about later, and please ignore my cat in the background scratching on things that he's not supposed to, is Star Wars Dooku Jedi Lost by Cavan Scott. So this is actually the script for the audio drama that Del Rey put out last October. I listened to it and it was really, really interesting. They got a really great cast of audiobook narrators to read it. And so there's really also, you know, music and sound effects. So if you like audiobooks and audio dramas, I highly recommend Dooku Jedi Lost. But this, like I said, is a screenplay. So I'm really interested to see how reading it might compare to listening to it. It does have my absolute favorite Star Wars bad guy, Asajj Ventress, as one of the main characters. Hashtag Asajj deserved better. I'm not bitter at all. Anyway, really looking forward to rereading this and getting more Asajj in my life. Next up, I have the third book in the Wayward Children series, Beneath the Sugar Sky by Shauna McGuire. The fifth book comes out this month, and while I have it pre-ordered, I am behind on reading these books. I enjoyed the first two, and I'm hoping to catch up, so I'm not as far behind as I am with this series. So I had mentioned earlier that one of my goals for this year is to reread early books and series that I might have started and then just for whatever reason never got around to reading. It's almost always grad school at this point, even though that's been over for over a year. It's grad school. Anyway, so along those lines, I have The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. It is the first book in the Broken Earth trilogy. I read it in 2016. I want to say and I really enjoyed it. It has really cool things involving timeline and narration. And then I never got around to reading the next two books in the trilogy. So I'm hoping to fix that this year. So that is why this is on my TBR for this month. Next up, and kind of a break, because I know so far I've mostly talked about like science fiction and fantasy stuff. I have Jane Doe by Victoria Helen Stone. This is a thriller. Kay and Chelsea over at the Not Now I'm Reading podcast have raved about this book. It came out a couple of years ago, and I picked it up when I was at the Ripped Bodice last December, and it's been on my shelves. I am, looking forward to reading something a little bit different than my usual fare, and I'm always in the mood for some good revenge thriller type thing. Going back to science fiction fantasy, next is The Stars Are Legion by Cameron Hurley, also known as Lesbians in Space. And yes, I do have that alternative cover. I should have maybe put that on here. Anyway, so this is kind of her generation ship, very gory, all-woman science fiction book. I've really liked Cameron Hurley's nonfiction writing, but I haven't really read any of her fiction. So I'm hoping to read this and then also maybe get around to reading The Light Brigade at some point this year. And last but not least, the book pretty much everyone I know has been raving about, Gideon the Ninth by Tasman Muir. This is lesbian necromancers, lots of skeletons, bones, dirty magazines. I know everyone's already read it, and I just didn't get around to reading it last year, and I do kind of feel guilty about it. I do have the nice first edition book with the sprayed edges, so that's really nice. But yeah, I'm looking forward to finally, you know, seeing what this book is about. I've remained relatively unspoiled for this book, which is kind of rare for something that it seems everyone's been talking about. So those are the main books that I'm hoping to get through this month. I might also add in some other books that I own, depending on how I feel. Potentially Updraft by Fran Wilde. That's a book that I've had on my e-reader for a couple of years now, and I just haven't gotten around to reading it. But yeah, that's kind of the general thing. I don't know in the future if I'm going to be dedicating any other months to just books that I own, but I figure since getting through my TBR, both my to own TBR, both physical and electronic, is one of my big goals, that I might as well just kind of start January off on that foot. So that's it for me. Do you have any 2020 reading goals that you want to share? Have you read any of the books that I've mentioned in this video that you have thoughts about? Anyone have any plans for 2020? Please leave a comment below or leave an emoji to let me know that you liked it. And thanks for watching, everyone. Bye.